Can you pretend to be my date for a day? The question landed between them like a fragile glass about to shatter. The single dad froze mid-step, grocery bag digging into his fingers as he turned to look at the woman standing beside him on the sidewalk. Her coat was too thin for the cold, sleeves frayed at the cuffs, eyes swollen as if she'd already cried once today, and was trying hard not to cry again. He had been asked many things in his life. Help fixing a tire. Spare change. Directions. But this? His daughter tugged gently on his hand. "Daddy," she whispered, sensing the tension before understanding it. The woman swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," she rushed, embarrassment flooding her face. "I know it's strange. You don't have to. Her voice cracked. "I just don't have anyone else." For a moment, the world seemed to hush. Cars passed. People hurried by. But in that tiny space between them, everything slowed. The single dad, Daniel, had learned to recognize desperation. Life had taught him that look the hard way. He'd worn it himself the day his wife never came home from the hospital. The day he realized single dad wasn't a temporary title, it was his life now. He shifted the grocery bag to the other hand. "Why?" he asked softly. The woman hesitated, then laughed without humor. "Because if I show up alone, they'll know." She gestured vaguely toward the elegant building across the street. White stone, tall windows, expensive cars lined up outside. "And if they know, I lose everything." Daniel frowned. His daughter peeked shyly from behind his leg, studying the woman with curious eyes. The woman noticed and immediately softened. "She's beautiful," she said, genuine warmth breaking through the fear. "Thank you," Daniel replied automatically. Then, more firmly, "What's your name?" "Lena." Something about the way she said it, quiet, careful, told him she wasn't used to being asked kindly. Daniel exhaled slowly. His mind raced with practical thoughts. "This is risky. This is awkward. This is none of my business." But another voice whispered louder. "You know what it's like to stand alone." He looked down at his daughter. "Sweetheart," he said gently, "would you mind waiting with Mrs. Patel inside the store for a minute?" She nodded, trusting him without question. When they were alone again, Daniel met Lena's eyes. "What exactly do you need me to do?" Relief flickered across her face, so fast it nearly broke her composure. "Just walk in with me. Hold my hand. Smile. Act like you're happy to be there." He almost laughed at that. Act like you're happy. If only life were that simple. "Just today," she added quickly. "I'll never bother you again." Daniel was silent for a long moment. Then he said the words that would change everything. "Okay." Lena's breath hitched. "Okay." "Yes," he repeated. "One day. But there are rules." Her eyes widened. "Anything." "I don't lie to my daughter," he said calmly. "She comes first. And if at any point you want to walk away, we do." Tears welled in Lena's eyes. She nodded fiercely. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." Daniel thought he did. Inside the building, everything felt wrong. Crystal lights glittered overhead. People dressed in confidence, and money glanced at Daniel with polite disinterest, and at Lena with sharp calculation. He felt her fingers tighten around his arm. "You okay?" he murmured. She nodded, though her smile trembled. "This must be your boyfriend," a well-dressed woman said coolly, eyes lingering on Daniel's worn jacket. "Date," Lena corrected gently. "Daniel." The word date echoed in his head. Daniel smiled politely. "Nice to meet you." As they moved deeper into the room, whispers followed. Daniel felt them like static against his skin. He leaned closer to Lena. "These people don't seem very friendly." She forced a laugh. "They're friendly when they think you belong." That sentence told him everything. A man approached, tall, expensive suit, sharp eyes. He assessed Daniel in a single glance. "And what do you do?" he asked, tone already dismissive. "I'm a father," Daniel replied without hesitation. The man blinked. Some nearby guests chuckled softly. Daniel didn't. "I also work full-time," he added calmly. "But being her dad is the job I'm proudest of." Silence followed. Not awkward, uncomfortable. Lena stared at him, something breaking open in her expression. In that moment, Daniel realized something unsettling. This wasn't just about pretending to be a date. This was about standing where someone had always been pushed aside. And without knowing how or why, Daniel had stepped directly into a battle he never planned to fight. By the time the night was over, secrets would surface, lies would unravel, and one simple act of kindness would expose a truth no one in that room was ready to face. And it all began with a poor woman, a single dad, and a question that changed everything. Daniel didn't notice the first insult at all. It slipped into the room softly, disguised as laughter. "So," a woman in a diamond necklace said, sipping her drink, "Lena always did have eclectic taste." The word eclectic hung in the air like perfume meant to suffocate. Lena stiffened beside him. Daniel felt it instantly, the subtle shift of someone bracing for impact. He placed his hand more firmly on her back, not as a performance, but as a shield. "She has excellent taste," Daniel said easily. "She chose tonight's dessert, didn't she?" A few polite laughs followed. The woman blinked, unprepared for deflection. Lena exhaled quietly. Daniel leaned down and whispered, "They do this often?" "Every chance they get," she murmured back. The room shimmered with wealth, but Daniel recognized the ugliness underneath. He'd seen it before. At school meetings where parents looked down on him for his thrift store jacket, at playgrounds where pity replaced respect once they learned he was raising a child alone. Across the room, the tall man from earlier watched them closely. His gaze wasn't curious anymore. It was suspicious. "He's Marcus," Lena whispered. "My supervisor." That explained it. Marcus approached again, smile tight. "Lena, we're about to announce the promotion." Daniel felt her breath catch. Promotion. Now the stakes made sense. Marcus's eyes flicked to Daniel. "We didn't know you were seeing someone seriously." Daniel met his gaze calmly. "Life surprises you." Marcus chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "Indeed. Especially when appearances matter." Daniel smiled faintly. "They do. Character matters more." The words landed harder than Daniel intended. A nearby cluster fell silent. Marcus straightened. "Excuse me," he said, retreating. Lena stared at Daniel, stunned. "You didn't have to say that." "Yes, I did," he replied gently. "No one gets to decide your worth." She swallowed. "They've been trying to for years." As the night wore on, Daniel began to notice patterns. Who spoke loudly? Who was ignored? Who pretended not to hear? Lena belonged to the third group, the ones talked around, not to. But whenever Daniel included her in conversation, asked her opinion, or laughed at her dry humor, the dynamic shifted. People noticed. And they didn't like it. A woman cornered Daniel near the refreshment table. "You seem devoted," she said. "Single fathers usually are desperate for stability." Daniel took a sip of water unfazed. "I'm not desperate," he said calmly. "I'm selective." The woman flushed and excused herself. From across the room, Lena watched, disbelief softening into something else, hope. Later, Daniel excused himself to check on his daughter, who sat quietly coloring at a side table. She looked up. "Daddy, why are they being mean to the lady?" Daniel crouched to her level. "Some people forget how to be kind when they think they're better than others." The girl frowned. "But she looks sad." Daniel nodded. "That's why we're here." She smiled and returned to her drawing. When Daniel stood, Marcus was waiting. "Walk with me," Marcus said curtly. They stopped near a tall window overlooking the city lights. "You don't belong here," Marcus said bluntly. Daniel tilted his head. "Funny. I was thinking the same about you," Marcus scoffed. "Lena has been a liability. Always late. Always distracted." Daniel's jaw tightened. "She's late because she works 2 jobs," he said. "Distracted because she cares. That's not a flaw." Marcus's smile vanished. "You don't know anything about her." Daniel met his eyes steadily. "I know enough." Marcus leaned closer. "She won't get the promotion. Not with you here." Daniel felt anger rise, but he kept his voice even. "Then this isn't about performance. It's about control." Marcus stepped back, lips thinning. You should leave. Daniel nodded slowly. We will. When she is ready. When Daniel returned to Lena, she read his face instantly. What happened? They're scared, he said simply. Of what? Of you not believing them anymore. Her eyes filled. I've spent my whole life trying to prove I deserve a seat at the table. Daniel shook his head. You already do. A hush fell over the room as Marcus tapped his glass. Before we announce the promotion, he said smoothly, there's been a concern raised. Lena's hand trembled in Daniel's. Daniel squeezed back. Whatever came next, he knew one thing for certain. This wasn't a performance anymore. This was a stand. And sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is refuse to sit down when they've been told to stay small. The room held its breath. And so did Lena. The silence after Marcus's announcement was heavier than any shout. Daniel felt it settle across the room, like a warning. A concern? Marcus repeated, smiling thinly as dozens of eyes turned toward Lena. Yes. About professionalism. Lena's shoulders tensed. Daniel didn't let go of her hand. Marcus continued, we value focus and commitment here. Certain personal choices can raise questions. Daniel heard the implication loud and clear. He leaned closer to Lena and whispered, whatever happens, you're not alone. She nodded, blinking back tears. Marcus gestured politely. Lena, would you like to address the room? A trap, disguised as courtesy. Daniel felt her fingers tighten. You don't have to, he murmured. But Lena surprised him. She straightened. I will, she said quietly. The room shifted. Whispers fluttered like nervous birds. I've worked here 6 years, Lena began. I've never missed a deadline. I cover shifts others won't. I stay late. I train new hires. If commitment is the question, my record answers it. Marcus interjected smoothly. No one is questioning your work ethic. Only your priorities. Daniel stepped forward before he could stop himself. Her priorities include surviving, he said evenly. That shouldn't be a crime. Gasps rippled through the room. Marcus's smile cracked. Sir, this is an internal matter. Daniel didn't back down. Then stop making it public. The room went deadly quiet. Marcus clenched his jaw. Security. Daddy. A small voice called out. Every head turned. Daniel's daughter stood up from her table, clutching her drawing. She walked forward slowly, eyes wide but steady. Daniel's heart nearly stopped. Sweetheart. She reached them and held up the picture. It showed 3 stick figures holding hands. This is my daddy, she said, pointing. And this is Miss Lena. And this is me. A murmur spread. She was sad, the girl continued. So Daddy helped her. No script. No performance. Just truth. Marcus stared, speechless. Lena dropped to her knees, tears streaming. Oh, sweetheart. The girl smiled shyly. Daddy says good people help each other. Daniel swallowed hard. For the first time all night, the room saw Lena, not as a liability, not as a rumor, but as a human being. A woman near the front dabbed her eyes. Marcus cleared his throat, rattled. This is highly unprofessional. Daniel stood tall. What's unprofessional is threatening someone's livelihood because they don't fit your image. Applause started, slow, hesitant, then grew. Marcus raised his hands. Enough. But it was too late. A board member stepped forward, an older woman with sharp eyes. Marcus, she said calmly, I'd like to review Lena's file myself. Marcus paled. That won't be necessary. It will, she replied. The power in the room shifted. Lena looked at Daniel, disbelief etched into her face. What's happening? Accountability, Daniel said softly. Minutes later, Lena was asked to step aside with the board member. Daniel waited with his daughter, heart pounding. I didn't mess up, did I? His daughter whispered. Daniel hugged her tightly. You were perfect. When Lena returned, her eyes were red, but she was smiling. They want to promote me, she whispered, and open an investigation. Daniel exhaled, a weight lifting he hadn't realized he carried. The board member approached Daniel. You raised a remarkable child, she said. And You reminded us what leadership looks like. Daniel nodded, humbled. As people began to leave, Lena lingered. I don't know how to thank you, she said. You changed my life. Daniel shook his head. You did that yourself. I just stood next to you. She smiled, this time without fear. Outside, the night air felt lighter. Daniel's daughter yawned.
Daddy.
Yes, sweetheart. Can we see Miss Lena again? Daniel glanced at Lena, who looked hopeful and nervous. He smiled. I think, he said gently, that would be very nice. Because what began as pretending had become something real. And sometimes, the bravest love stories don't start with romance. They start with kindness, courage, and a single dad who said yes when it mattered most. Daniel thought the hardest part was over. He was wrong. The promotion announcement spread through the office faster than any congratulations. By Monday morning, Lena's name was everywhere, whispered in hallways, typed into emails, debated behind closed doors. But power never surrenders quietly. Lena sat across from Daniel at a small cafe, hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. Marcus hasn't spoken to me since that night, she said. But HR called this morning. Daniel frowned. That doesn't sound good. They said it's about clarifying events. She swallowed. He's building a story. Daniel leaned back, jaw tight. Then we stick to the truth. She looked at him with tired eyes. The truth didn't protect me before. It will now, he said. You're not alone anymore. The meeting room was cold, all glass and steel. Lena sat between two HR reps while Marcus positioned himself across the table, calm, rehearsed. Daniel waited outside with his daughter, watching the door like a lifeline. Inside, Marcus spoke smoothly. Lena created a disruptive environment. She brought an outsider, caused a scene, and compromised company image. Lena's voice shook, but she didn't falter. I was invited, and I was targeted. Marcus smiled thinly. Perception matters. The HR rep glanced down at her notes. We've received multiple complaints about your conduct, Lena. Lena's heart sank. From whom? Marcus folded his hands. Anonymous. Outside, Daniel's daughter colored quietly. Daddy, are bullies allowed to win? Daniel paused. Not if good people speak up. At that moment, the door opened. The board member from the event stepped in, carrying a folder. Good morning, she said crisply. I'll be joining this meeting. Marcus stiffened. Inside, the tone shifted immediately. The board member laid documents on the table. We've reviewed Lena's performance evaluations. Exemplary. We've also reviewed internal messages. Marcus's smile faded. Specifically, she continued, your messages. She slid a printed email forward. Marcus's face drained of color. The HR rep read silently, eyes widening. You wrote, the board member said evenly. If she doesn't learn her place, we'll make sure she's gone. Silence. Lena's breath caught. Marcus stammered. That was taken out of context. The board member shook her head. There is no context where intimidation is acceptable. She turned to Lena. You are not under review. You are protected. Lena broke down, tears spilling freely. Outside, Daniel saw Lena emerge shaking. He stood instantly. What happened? They stopped him, she whispered. They stopped him. Daniel pulled her into a hug, his daughter wrapping her arms around both of them. Across the hallway, Marcus was escorted out. That evening, Lena sat on Daniel's couch, still stunned. I kept waiting for someone to rescue me, she said quietly. I never thought it would be this. Daniel smiled softly. Sometimes rescue looks like standing up together. She laughed weakly. Your daughter saved me. Daniel glanced at her, asleep against a pillow. She reminded them who they were supposed to be. Lena hesitated. Daniel, this wasn't just pretending for you, was it? He thought carefully. I came to help for a day. I stayed because it mattered. She nodded, eyes shining. Days passed. Lena moved into her new office. Marcus's name disappeared. And something else grew quietly, shared dinners, school pickups, laughter without fear. One night, Lena stood at Daniel's door, nervous. I don't want to pretend anymore, she said. Daniel met her gaze. Neither do I. because what began as a favor had become a foundation. And sometimes, the greatest love stories aren't written in grand gestures. They're built in courage, truth, and choosing each other after the storm. The first real date felt more terrifying than pretending ever had. Lena stood in Daniel's doorway, smoothing her coat like it might betray her nerves. "This is ridiculous," she laughed softly. "I've faced boardrooms with less fear." Daniel smiled, holding his keys. "Good sign. Means it matters." From the couch, his daughter beamed. "Daddy, you're smiling different." Daniel froze. Lena laughed. "I'll take that as approval." They didn't go anywhere fancy. Just a quiet diner with cracked vinyl booths and warm lights. The kind of place where nobody measured worth by shoes or titles. "This feels right," Lena said, exhaling as they slid into the booth. Daniel nodded. "Real usually does." Over milkshakes, Lena told him the parts she'd never said out loud, about growing up poor, about always feeling like she had to earn permission to exist, about how Marcus had sensed that weakness and used it. "I thought if I just endured it long enough, I'd be safe," she said. Daniel listened, steady. "Endurance isn't the same as living." She met his eyes. "You taught me that." He shook his head. "You learned it." Weeks turned into months. Life didn't become perfect, but it became honest. Lena flourished at work, leading with empathy instead of fear. Daniel found himself lighter, laughing more. His daughter began drawing pictures of our family without asking permission. One evening, Lena watched Daniel tuck his daughter into bed. "Stay," the girl whispered to Lena. Lena hesitated, then nodded. After the door closed, Lena wiped her eyes. "I never thought I belong anywhere." Daniel took her hand. "You belong here." The real test came unexpectedly. A letter arrived, an apology from the company, formal and polished. It ended with an offer, a high-profile position in another city. Lena stared at it for hours. "That's everything I wanted," she said quietly. "Before." Daniel didn't interrupt. "But it would mean leaving," she added. "And I don't want to run anymore." He squeezed her hand. "Then don't." She smiled through tears. "I choose this." On a sunny afternoon, months later, Daniel's daughter stood between them in the park. "Are you my mommy now?" she asked Lena innocently. Lena knelt, heart pounding. "I don't want to take anyone's place," she said gently. "But if you want me to love you, I already do." The girl threw her arms around her. "Good." Daniel's vision blurred. Years later, people would ask how it started. Not with fireworks, not with wealth, not with pretending, but with a simple question asked in desperation, and a simple answer given in kindness. "Can you pretend to be my date for a day?" And a single dad who said yes, then stayed when it mattered most. The end.